And now, AM650 presents your source for leading-edge news and information on today's hottest products and services. This is Experts on Call on AM650.
Welcome to Key Pacific's Talk About Strata, this edition of Experts on Call here on AM 650. I'm Stirling Fox, joined in studio by Tony Gioventu, the Executive Director of the Condominium Homeowners Association of British Columbia and notorious BC newspaper columnist with the province, the Times columnist, and various papers around the province. Hello, Tony. Welcome back.
Well, thank you, Sterling. That's a mouthful, isn't it?
You are a busy guy. 500 plus columns and all this work with the condominium homeowners. It's amazing you find time for this program. It's good to see you again.
Thank you. It's a pleasure. And we have with us tonight Adrienne Murray, who is a lawyer who essentially specializes in strata property law and provides service for strata corporations and owners and for assisting strata agents and managers, and provides a broad level of public education also through the Real Estate Council and the BCREA in the province.
Adrienne, nice to have you back from your White Rock offices. Good to see you again.
Thank you, Sterling. It's good to be here.
Well, let's talk a little bit about checking out the new building. All of a sudden, in the marketplace, there are an abundance. One might say a bit of a superabundance of available units. All of them, not all, but a lot of new units coming online. So let's walk through I'm the customer, I'm curious, I'm leaning in this direction, I want to go check out your show home and the building, and I'm kind of detail-oriented, but I'm already suspicious that I'm going to overlook a few. So Adrienne, give us a few important details that absolutely cannot be overlooked in that initial walkthrough.
Well, I think obviously there are many, many of them, but I'm going to focus today on parking and storage.
Okay.
Because the questions that you asked today, as you're buying your strata lot, whether it's constructed or not, are going to then flow over into your occupation of it and what you could sell when you're ready to sell this strata lot. So those first questions that you ask about parking and storage and understanding what you're getting are absolutely critical.
Is it common that an apartment condo strata unit would come pretty much automatically, Adrienne, with some kind of storage locker or facility?
No.
Oh.
No.
Well, there's myth number one that we've already stuck a pin in.
I think that historically we used to see automatic parking, not necessarily automatic storage lockers, but automatic parking. But we've got some density in downtown Vancouver right now that is zoned with a 0.5 parking spaces per strata lot ratio. So as the developer is getting permission to build, the zoning or the development permits are going to tell the developer how many parking spaces they have to provide. Often, and in particular if you get outside of...
Is this a municipal rule? Is this the City of Vancouver now changing the playing field, so to speak?
The city and only parts of the City of Vancouver.
Okay.
So you're going to be right in the downtown, probably core. The lower mainland, if you go to Burnaby, Coquitlam, Surrey, you'll probably see ratios of maybe 1.5, 1.7 parking spaces per strata lot.
Unit, okay.
So you'll have one for everybody and then extra.
Right.
But now we're seeing zoning with a 0.5 parking spaces, and some buildings actually don't have parking.
Interesting, but according to this new rule I'm just learning about, Tony, if the City of Vancouver, if you apply to the City of Vancouver to build a 100-unit condo, you would be obliged to provide 50 parking spaces based on what Adrienne has just explained this development criterion to be.
It'll depend on the zoning requirement of that specific neighborhood.
Oh, okay.
So that neighborhood
so it's
may be
really flexible, almost block to block.
Absolutely.
It is.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And it stands to reason if there is geography in the area where you can actually accommodate additional parking, a parking lot with landscaping over top of it, or a parking podium that the building's on that holds more parking spaces, then it's feasible to do that. But where we're in downtown areas or where we're in high density areas where space is is ultimately quite limited. And think about False Creek, where we have parking garages. There is a limit to how deep the parking garages can go because they're intertidal areas.
Of course,
right?
yeah,
And
the
so
water table.
City
Sure,
of New
yeah.
Westminster has the same issue with parking garages in the intertidal areas. So, there are long-term maintenance and obligations around some pumps and extraction and those types of things, those areas. But they're also it's also about the city trying to reduce the number of cars in the downtown core.
And a lot of people are moving to the downtown core.
Yep.
It's a lifestyle choice, and they're proudly moving there because they can walk to work and they don't want to have a car anymore. Are you finding more and more people making those choices, Adrienne?
Those choices are being made, and in fact, in some of these buildings with no or very, very limited parking, we're seeing developers providing co-op vehicles.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yes.
some developers will actually have a co-op vehicle there for the owners to use on an arranged basis or rental basis. So, I mean, there's a variety of options. But let's come back to the idea that now you've walked into a building and the developer's promising you one parking stall and one storage locker.
Okay.
So you start with that premise, and that's still going to be the case in the vast majority of buildings that you buy into.
And is that likely
today.
to be included, for example, in the brochure that you pick up at the sales office, that each unit comes with a parking a stall and a storage locker? If it's available, would they not want to advertise it as such, Tony?
Not necessarily, because there might be quite a limit of parking.
Oh,
right?
okay.
And so the parking in the storage locker may in fact be a negotiating item. Right?
Okay.
And it might be something that helps to sweeten the deal. It might be something that, you might have a number of people who come in with no vehicles. They have no intention of
Exactly, yeah.
having a parking space. Or you might have a person coming in that has 2 or 3 vehicles and wants an additional second or third parking space. So it's going to be based on availability. It's going to be based upon value. Parking spaces in some areas for an agreement to have exclusive access of this parking spot for the next 99 years. Those parking spaces can be worth $25,000 to $50,000 a space.
Mm-hmm.
So value-wise, as Adrienne was saying, it has a huge impact on the future value of your property if you have 2 parking spaces that are assigned to your strata lot.
So, Adrienne, never assume would be watchword number 1. And you're making your first inspection of one of these new spots. And so make it a point to ask
Absolutely.
quite specifically about parking spaces and storage lockers. And if you don't get a satisfactory response, perhaps you should just turn on your heel and find another building to inspect.
Well, and Sterling, that's interesting. What is a satisfactory response? Is the developer saying, yes, you will get one parking space and a storage locker sufficient?
Mm-hmm.
And the short answer, no.
Okay.
Because now we need to dig a little deeper and we need to say, well, how is this area designated and how am I going to have the right to use it on any long-term basis? So the first question is, what's the designation? If the designation is common property, then that means it's property that's not part of a strata lot, so I don't own it. And in fact, it's owned by all of the owners in the entire development collectively.
So that would be the parkade in this case, right?
Yes,
Okay.
often.
Okay.
So the entire parkade is common property. That means everybody in the building owns a piece of it,
Okay.
and everyone is therefore entitled to use it. So the question that needs to be asked is, well, what gives me the right to use stall 22? What legal basis? Because if I want to pull in every day to stall 22, and I want to be able to say to the buyer who buys my strata lot, you're going to get the use of stall 22.
Mm-hmm.
What's my legal basis? So that would be the next question we would have to ask. And very often, that discussion never happens. The developer says, yes, you get a parking space. You say, that's great.
And you move on.
Parking space number 22, and away I go. And if it turns out that that's common property under the Strata Property Act, the Strata Council can assign that common property to any owner they wish.
So even though the developer says, hey, number 22, it's got your name on it, no problem. Now let's go take a look at the suite. And you go, great, I like that. And off you go. And you've checked that off in your mind, right? That's done.
Exactly.
Well, maybe it's not.
That's exactly the case.
So
And
when does it have to be produced in writing? When do I need to see something that says, yes, I get spot 22 and here it is, and not only do I get to occupy it, I get to resell it if I choose to leave?
well, it's the in writing that's an issue because the developer might well put it into the contract, but you really have to say on what's the underlying legal basis for that. The
Okay.
developer's just promising you the use of common property.
And you're saying the Strata Council would be the legal body that would have to designate number 22 to me.
That Ed could change it in the future.
Oh.
That's an
That's
issue.
and that's the misconception. When people go into buildings and they think I'm getting this designated
Yeah.
parking space and
Yeah.
it's common property, I'm getting it designated, it's being assigned to me, and I have this other parking space. And think about it. We often think about it as the first buyer coming into the gate, but think about buildings that are 15 years old where this occurred, where we're now dealing with the 7th or the 8th subsequent buyer of that strata lot.
Okay.
And that information has been distorted, has not been conveyed properly. The Strata Corporation likely doesn't have any record of that original agreement and assignment, and it becomes even that much more confusing as time progresses. So what we're going to start to see, and we'll talk about this later in the show, but what we're going to start to see is there's a legislative change coming on January 1st. And on January 1st, the Strata Corporation is going to have an obligation to disclose the allocation of parking and storage lockers. And so how parking is designated is created on the registered strata plan. So the registered strata plan determines what kind of property is it. Is it common property? Is it limited common property for the exclusive use of specific strata lots?
Right.
Or is it part of a strata lot?
So I, as the buyer going to this spiffy new building, full of curiosity and questions, should this strata plan, this registered strata plan to which you've just referred, Tony, should I want to know about that? Should I want to see that? Or is that something that is really all for the bureaucrats in Victoria that I don't need to pay much attention to?
Well, I think that the registered strata plan is one of the most valuable documents you'll ever look at.
As a buyer, a
As
potential
as
buyer.
a buyer, as a strata council, as an owner,
Why?
as a property manager, it sets out all the definitions of property boundaries. It tells me where all the boundaries of a strata lot are, tells me what's the common property of the strata, who's responsible to maintain and repair common property,
Right.
tells me who can use and allocate property. Beyond the strata plan, it deals with things like unit entitlement and voting entitlement, how many votes per unit, what occurs with respects to the allocation of expenses on unit entitlement. So the registered strata plan and these associated documents that are registered as well are probably the most critical documents that we look at. Oftentimes people will ask questions, simple question, well, who's responsible for the maintenance of the parking lot?
Right.
Right? That simple question, and you will frequently see stratas sending letters to the strata owners saying you have grease or oil on your spot, or
Right.
there's something on, you have to maintain your parking spot. Well, it goes back to the root of what is the designation of the property. And the first place you always look is the strata plan.
So if I'm the potential buyer checking this building out, Adrienne, is the developer, is the seller likely to have this registered plan available in the show home? And if I ask a sales rep, can I see this, please? It's kind of important to me.
Well,
Are they required to show it to me, or they can give me? Can they just tap dance?
No tap dancing allowed. If you're buying from a developer, the developer is obligated. If the developer has built a building with 5 units or more, the developer is obligated to prepare a disclosure statement.
Okay.
So the disclosure statement document is going to contain all the information that we've been talking about. What's the status of the parking? What's the designation? And it will have a draft strata plan attached. So even if the building isn't completed, because the strata plan isn't registered until the building's actually finished and built and measured up,
Okay.
and then the strata plan's filed. But even if we're before that, there'll be a preliminary strata plan that will give you a sense of what the designation is.
Okay, and that's what has to be filed at the permission to construct phase, correct?
Well, no, the permission to construct is all going to be done with the city, the municipality.
Okay.
Once the building is completed, a surveyor actually comes in, measures it all up, prepares a final strata plan based on the actual
The real
built
numbers.
the real numbers,
Right.
completes the strata plan, and that's the plan that gets filed in the land title office. But I mean, the developer's intentions are going to be close. So even if you're looking at a preliminary strata plan, you can see
You get a pretty good idea.
how the developer was planning
Right.
to designate the parking. Was it going to be common property? Was it going to be limited common property?
Our guest is Adrienne Murray. She is a lawyer who practices strata law in White Rock. Lovely to have you back with us too, Adrienne. I'm Sterling Fox. He's Tony Gioventu. This is Key Pacific's Talk About Strata, and we'll be right back.
There's still more ahead with Experts on Call, the show focused on delivering relevant and beneficial consumer information. This is Experts on Call on AM 650.